In this video, we are going to know the summary of The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde with visuals. So let's start. The story opens in the fashionable London flat of a young gentleman named Algernon Moncrieff, a witty, lazy, pleasure-loving bachelor whose butler Lane has just set out cucumber sandwiches for the arrival of his aunt, Lady Bracknell, and her daughter, Gwendolen Fairfax. Before they arrive, Algernon's closest friend, Jack Worthing, drops by for a visit. In the city, Jack goes by the name Ernest, and it is this very name that sets the whole comedy in motion. While chatting, Algernon notices that Jack has left behind a silver cigarette case, and engraved inside it is a tender little message from someone called Little Cecily to her uncle Jack. Caught out, Jack confesses the truth. In the countryside, where he serves as guardian to a young woman named Cecily Cardew, he is known as the honest, dependable Jack. But whenever he wants to escape the dullness of country life and enjoy himself in town, he invents an excuse, a troublesome, disgraceful younger brother named Ernest, who is always getting into some scrape in London and needs rescuing. Under the pretense of visiting this imaginary brother, Jack slips away to the city and lives there as Ernest himself, free to misbehave without damaging his good name at home. Algernon is thrilled to hear this, since he has invented an almost identical trick of his own. He has an invalid friend named Bunbury, who lives conveniently in the country and is always on the verge of a dramatic collapse. Whenever Algernon wants to dodge a boring dinner or family obligation, he claims poor Bunbury urgently needs him and dashes off. Algernon dubs this kind of double life Bunburying, and teases Jack for being, in his own way, a fellow Bunburyist. Algernon further complains, half seriously, that he refuses to attend Lady Bracknell's dinner tonight because he has been placed next to a dull relative at the table, and he privately decides Bunbury will need him urgently instead. Jack then admits his real reason for coming to town that day. He intends to propose to Gwendolen. When Lady Bracknell and Gwendolen arrive, Lady Bracknell steps into another room to speak with Algernon, giving Jack his chance. He proposes, and Gwendolen happily accepts, but with an odd condition attached to her joy. She confesses that she has always dreamed of loving a man specifically named Ernest, because the name alone fills her with a sense of absolute trust and romance. Jack, of course, is only pretending to be Ernest, a fact he dares not reveal. Lady Bracknell soon returns and begins a formidable interview of Jack as a potential husband, quizzing him about his income, his politics, and his family background. She approves of the fact that he smokes, remarking that a man ought to have some occupation, and she is satisfied with his income and his town address, jotting notes as she goes. All goes reasonably well until she learns the strange story of his origins. As a baby, Jack was found abandoned in a handbag left in the cloakroom of Victoria Station, placed there by a careless nurse who had somehow mistaken the bag for his pram. Lady Bracknell is scandalized by the lack of a proper, respectable lineage and flatly forbids the marriage, sweeping out of the flat with her daughter in tow. Before she leaves, though, Gwendolen secretly manages to get Jack's country address, determined to see him again no matter what her mother says. Left alone with Jack, Algernon overhears the location of the country estate and learns, with great interest, about the pretty young ward living there. Ever restless and always hungry for a new adventure, Algernon quietly resolves to travel to the countryside himself, disguised as Jack's infamous, invented brother Ernest, just to meet this Cecily for himself. The scene then shifts to the garden of Jack's country house, where Cecily is enduring a dull lesson with her strict governess, Miss Prism, while dreaming instead of the wicked, fascinating Ernest she has never actually met, but has already fallen in love with in her imagination. She keeps a diary in which she has been writing an entire secret romance with him, complete with an imaginary engagement. Miss Prism scolds her for neglecting German grammar in favor of her diary, insisting that memory is the one thing responsible for most of the diary-keeping habits of young women, while Cecily protests that her diary is far too interesting to be practical. The kindly local rector, Dr. Chasuble, pays a visit, complimenting Miss Prism on her scholarly turn of phrase, and a gentle, comic flirtation plays out between the two of them, full of little compliments neither quite admits to enjoying. Suddenly, a servant announces the arrival of Mr. Ernest Worthing, and in walks Algernon, playing the part of Jack's troublesome brother to perfection. Cecily is delighted, since this is exactly the man she has been dreaming of, and Algernon, in turn, is quickly charmed by her. The two grow close almost immediately. Just then, Jack himself returns home unexpectedly, dressed head to toe in mourning black. He has decided to kill off his fictional brother for good, planning to announce that Ernest has died suddenly in Paris so that the lie can finally be buried. He is horrified to discover Algernon already there, cheerfully impersonating the very brother he meant to erase. He cannot expose him without revealing his own long history of deception, so he is forced to grit his teeth and play along. Meanwhile, Cecily sweetly informs Ernest that they have in fact been engaged for months already, according to her diary, and even shows him the love letter she wrote to herself in his name. Utterly charmed, Algernon quietly visits Dr. Chasuble and arranges to be christened Ernest that very afternoon, so that his name will finally match the identity Cecily has fallen for. Jack, still trying to bury his fictitious brother forever, makes the exact same private arrangement with Dr. Chasuble for himself. Just then, Gwendolen arrives from London, having come to see Jack. She and Cecily meet for the first time and are initially delighted with one another, exchanging warm compliments over tea, until each casually mentions her engagement to a man named Ernest Worthing. Believing they are rivals for the same man, the warmth instantly turns to icy, exquisitely polite hostility. Over tea and cake, the two women trade pointed remarks while pretending to remain perfectly civil. Gwendolen pointedly asking for sugar she does not want, and Cecily deliberately serving her cake instead of the bread and butter she requested. Each small act of hospitality turned into a quiet act of war. The tension breaks only when Jack and Algernon reappear, and the whole deception collapses at once. Neither man is actually named Ernest. Feeling humiliated and deceived, Gwendolen and Cecily link arms and retreat into the house together, united in their anger, refusing to speak to either man. Trying to win the women back, Jack and Algernon explain that they have each separately arranged to be christened Ernest that very day, hoping to make the name true at last for love's sake. Touched by the gesture, Gwendolen and Cecily begin to soften, though the men are not out of danger yet. At that moment, Lady Bracknell arrives, having followed her daughter into the countryside. She is startled to learn of Algernon's sudden engagement to Cecily, but warms considerably once she hears of Cecily's very comfortable inheritance. Jack, however, refuses to give his consent to that marriage, since he is Cecily's legal guardian, unless Lady Bracknell finally agrees to let him marry Gwendolen. The standoff seems hopeless until Dr. Chasuble happens to mention Miss Prism's name in passing. Lady Bracknell reacts with sudden astonishment and demands to see her immediately. It turns out that Miss Prism once worked as a nurse for Lady Bracknell's own family many years earlier and had been entrusted with a baby boy. In a famous fit of absent-mindedness, she had once placed the manuscript of a novel she was writing into a baby carriage and left the actual baby behind in a handbag, which she then abandoned at Victoria Station. Jack realizes with amazement that he must be that very baby. He hurries off and returns with the same old handbag in which he was found as proof, and Lady Bracknell confirms it. Jack, it turns out, is Algernon's long-lost older brother and the son of her late sister, which instantly makes him a proper member of the family and removes her objection to his birth. Better still, Jack discovers that he had been named after his father, and upon checking the old army records, learns that his father's name was Ernest John Moncrieff. Jack has been named Ernest all along, without ever knowing it. The play closes on a wave of joyful resolution. Jack can now honestly be called Ernest, satisfying the very condition Gwendolen always dreamed of. Algernon and Cecily remain happily engaged, and even Dr. Chasuble and Miss Prism are gently hinted to be heading toward a match of their own. Turning to his newly reconciled family, Jack remarks that he has only now, for the first time in his life, realized the vital importance of being earnest.